You are listening to the Doc Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So, if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or his Substack. Or simply buy him a coffee with a one-off donation, links to which can be found at docmalik.com. Now, let's get on with the show.
Hi, everybody. So if you're reading my Substacks, you'll know I'm turning 50 this summer. And to celebrate, one of the things I'm planning is holding an event where I get to meet you guys and have amazing food. And it's on the 13th of September this year, midday to 3 p.m. in a central London steakhouse. For those of you who are vegetarian, there will be vegetarian options also available. But the theme is meat, glorious meat. And I've already launched it yesterday on my Substack for paid subscribers only. So they get first access. There has to be some benefits to being a paid subscriber. And that's one of them. They get first access to everything. And half the tickets have gone already. But the good news is, if there's any slots left, in a week's time, I'll be doing a general release and you'll have access to the link if you subscribe to my Substack, docmalik.com. docmalik.substack.com. So make sure you're a subscriber. If you're listening and haven't already subscribed, you get access to, all these kind of events and offers. And if you're a paid subscriber, you should be able to go back to my Substacks and find the link, or I'll post it again later on this week, just in case you've missed it. But remember, half the tickets have gone already. Now, this is a non-profit event. All the money is going towards food, drinks, and venue hire. Okay, I'm not making any money from it. So why am I doing it? Well, I want to meet you guys. I want to meet you guys in person, and this is what my way of saying thank you and my way of having fun. Yeah, I love you guys, and I want to hang out with you. On another note, I've still got 3 slots left, just 3, for the summer retreat. So if you want, grab them before they disappear. The retreat is on the last weekend of June. It's going to be absolutely epic. Epic. You get to hang out with me, chill out with me, take part in multiple different treatments and sessions, and just have a wonderful time. So remember, only 3 slots left. So if you're interested in that, go to my website, go to events, and you'll be able to book the summer retreat. Remember, if you're a paid subscriber, you do get a discount. Again, it's on my Substack what the discount code is. Folks, on that note, let's dive into this chat with Cheryl Granger, who has been a frequent guest on UK Column. Cheryl has been looking into the MHRA, and this is really a very interesting conversation, and also just highlights some of the problems that we've got with our regulatory bodies. Okay, folks, enjoy. There you go, Cheryl. Fire away, my friend. Thank you for coming. Seriously.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm glad I found your house.
Yeah, it's all right. You're not the first who found it difficult.
But I'm here now, and obviously thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to talk about what I've been involved with over the last 5 years, can you believe?
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Where did it go?
Well, I mean, I've been away right from the start, so that makes me a little bit different to quite a few people. I basically knew things were wrong because of my background.
Yeah, tell me, what was you told me before, you worked in pharma?
I've always been involved in training.
That's it.
For the pharmaceutical industry. But I was a medical rep. I was a drug pusher a long time ago. Those people that doctors don't like to meet. So
you were one of those pretty girls that went around the wars trying to entice all the consultants to take their products.
That's right.
Am I right? Because I talk about this in the 80s and 90s. You used to come round and give us, the flash torch pens and the tourniquets and the free lunches.
Well, I was the first woman that my regional manager employed. He'd always had men up till then in his team. And then I was the start of them thinking, well, women can do this as well, I suppose. So I used to sell hydroxychloroquine.
Oh, wow.
So I sell Plaquenil, which obviously rang bells when things were being said about hydroxychloroquine. I train reps, so I've actually got a good background in lots of different subjects. So the anatomy and physiology, yes, but pharmacology, development of a medicine, immunology, all the bugs that cause you to have a problem. That's the whole set of information that I'm training people on. And every bit of that seemed to be not acted on properly since 2020.
What do you mean?
Well, people were made to believe that this was such a horrendous infection. At the time of it all starting, I was a trustee, or a governor, should we say. Yeah, my son's friends call me the governor. So basically, I'd done 13 years as a governor of a school. And the week before we shut down on the Friday, on the Monday, Tuesday, we had the whole school in to find a new headmaster, because somebody had resigned and we needed to find one before we locked down, ready for somebody to come in September. And the whole school was together. And the way that people were behaving, not going near each other and keeping washing hands. There was one woman from the local authority who had a long conversation with me about how her hands were getting so sore because she had to keep going and washing them. And I says, well, you don't really. And then she'd come out of washing them in the bathroom to use the antibacterial stuff or antiviral stuff on the desk. And then she'd tell me that in the morning she got in a car and she sprayed a steering wheel and you said to her, well, who else drives your car? Nobody. And, it all did my brain in, because I found the whole thing totally illogical and totally unscientific.
So you weren't scared?
No.
God bless you.
And, infections have never really bothered me. I was brought up with colds. I had a childhood of colds. They took my tonsils out to stop me getting colds. That didn't work. So I used to be sent to school with my dad's big handkerchief, and off I went and, spread the germs about and came home and eventually got rid of them. And that's what we did. And that's the way that I was brought up. You weren't namby-pamby over infections. You just got on with it.
Yeah.
My sister went to school and got everything, the measles and the chicken pox, the whole lot.
Mumps, all that stuff.
Brought them home to me, and I got them worse, which was very nice of her. But we all recovered. You didn't hear of anybody dying.
No.
It was, and nobody was really dying.
There was no fear attached with it. I remember as well. I'm old enough to remember. When I was a kid.
Yeah.
In the 80s, everybody got German measles 1 month or chicken pox, and no one was like, oh my God, you've got it was just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I remember the GP telling my mum, don't worry about it.
Apparently when I had measles, I was blood red and I looked terrible, and our next door neighbour came in and cried when she saw me, but perhaps that wasn't the rash, I don't know. But at the end of the day, we all got better, and your GP came to visit you. Every single kid, he came to visit and make sure they were okay. So none of this really bothered me. I'd never had a flu jab because I couldn't see the point in having one. I'd had flu twice probably in my life, I think.
Something knocking on your rings or bracelet. Sorry, that's what I was looking at. Sorry.
So it didn't bother me. And I started talking to the kids. I've got a 27-year-old and a 30-year-old. So they were, 22 and 25 when it all started. And my daughter in particular, she was expecting them to come with carts down the road and take the bodies away.
Wow.
Because that's what was being told to us, really. Everybody was dying. We had all those death figures every night. And I kept looking at the figures of people who were dying of, heart attacks and dementia and all the other things that people died of. And it all put it all into perspective. And you just think, what are they going on about? Then I found out that in India, instead of telling how many had died, they apparently, being more optimistic than us, actually start telling you how many have survived. So it's
all about the words, isn't it?
Yeah. Doom and gloom. And those 3 words, if you're promoting something, you use the 3 words. Advertising used 3 words. And they had the 3 podium. It's that podium. They had the 3 people, the stooges, stood there telling us with the message on the front of it. And I just thought it was ridiculous. And then we got to the bit where...
Build back better.
Yeah.
It's always 3 words. Safe and effective. Yeah. Is that a marketing trick?
Yeah. And it emphasises a message that's there all the time, and every night when they were on, the same sort of message again. And I just thought it was incredibly bad. I just didn't understand why people were kind of falling for it. Perhaps that makes me a bit thick, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I just didn't get why people were getting their knickers in a twist, we say, about these things.
I think you're divergent. So that's what it is. So basically, I know there's some tribunal business, first year tribunal, ICO, MHRA. I don't want to talk about that right now. I know it's in the midst of that. I think there's a lot more for you to talk about. I think what I really want to talk about is like you've been doing some work looking into the MHRA and how it functions, and or not. What if you've taken that pharmaceutical, big pharma kind of background of yours. Now you're applying it to MHRA, which is the UK governing body to make sure regulate that all drugs and medical devices are safe for the public. Pharmacovigilance. What have you discovered? Like what have you been digging in with your freedom of information requests and listening in on their meetings?
Well, if you actually take the MHRA and turn it around, that spells harm. So that's something to keep at the back of your mind. Pharmacovigilance is to protect us by spotting any signals that are coming to the fore from the different systems they have for analysing what happens to people after they've taken drugs. And they weren't spotting signals. But going back, the MHRA came out of different committees after thalidomide. So you've got thalidomide in the 60s. 1968, we got the Medicines Act. And that had two specifications, amongst others, but two in particular, was that you couldn't just promote a medicine based on animal studies alone. And the second thing was that you couldn't promote something for pregnancy if it hadn't been shown to be safe.
Right. Makes sense.
And therefore, the MHRA came out of these different committees to be responsible for making sure that we didn't have another thalidomide.
And when did the MHRA come into existence, roughly?
I'll not get that right. It's not. There were lots of different other committees, and these things morph into different things. I can't remember the date.
I'll find it. April 2003.
Yeah, so it's not that long ago, really.
Yeah, it's not that long ago. It was a merger, Medical Devices Agency and the Medicines Control Agency.
Yeah, so it's bringing medicines and devices together, which is what they were talking at this last board meeting. There was an emphasis on both branches. They also look after blood products as well.
Biologics.
Yeah, so we've had a problem with blood products, if you remember. And all these things, if there's a problem...
No, recap. What was that problem? I think I know what you mean, but remind me.
With the HIV and what have you. And it all takes so many years to bring to fruition. And that's the terrible thing, when people have known about these things for a long time. So the MHRA was basically set up to ensure that we don't go the thalidomide route again, and I'd suggest that they've failed miserably. So I started writing freedom of information. First of all, I asked them whether they were finding out if a blood donor was actually vaccinated or not. Oh, and they didn't need to do that because there was no problem, because it stayed in the arm and it didn't go in the blood. And I got a fluffy answer on that one.
Yeah. Remember that one? By the way, I'm just going to pause for a second. Talking about Debbie Evans, actually, I've got a meeting with her tomorrow morning on Zoom. I'm going to try and help her set up a Substack. And I really want to help her.
I really should do that. But
I can help you with that.
And I can get my daughter to help me as well, really. It's just getting round to it.
Well, honestly, I could help you out in one morning. So if you want, now that you know where I live, I'm inviting you. You're welcome to come. Bring your laptop. I'll connect you to the internet and I can set you up. And I really want Debbie to do it. I think people like you and Debbie have got so many important things to share with the world. I mean that, Cheryl. And, Debbie doesn't have that platform anymore. So I think it's really important that she goes on something like Substack and posts her own videos. She can have a monologue.
Well, we're going to do a video on Saturday afternoon about the MHRA board meeting we've just been to, which was June's last.
I know, I heard that.
Yes.
It's funny how all these people are now suddenly disappearing quietly into the night.
Yes, never to be seen again. Oh, yes, they are going to be seen again. They pop up in places that you might not have expected.
Right, yes. Yeah. You're right. Someone sent me a picture. God, I can't remember now. They were saying, oh, look at this. All these old people, some Harvard something lecture program, and Jacinda Ahern's there, and former member of something else. All these people, they keep getting recycled. Yeah. It's funny how they always have a cozy job to go to.
Yeah, because they're, the company's people. They actually are all singing to the same hymn sheet. So the board meeting, they were calling June Rain, Dame June, the national treasure.
Oh my God.
Right. So
Let me be sick.
That has to be stated.
Were there vomit buckets around?
No, they were all, they've got the new chair of the board there, his first meeting. They haven't had one since November. She was there as her last meeting. And then we've got this new guy coming in.
She's the same one that was saying how the MHRA is an enabler.
Yes, she stated that. We've got it on a slide.
Why is that a big deal?
Because 86% of their funding comes from pharma, and she's enabling the pharmaceutical industry to get their drugs out quicker, which is what they're aiming for. So it's 90 to 100 days to get things turned round through their system. And they're very, very keen that they're on track with that. So you don't have any long-term information.
Yeah, I know. They keep talking about this. Debbie's talked about fast-tracking cancer, Kieran. And if I just
because they've got the mRNA technology now, which has been stated as being safe and effective. Yeah. So if it's safe and effective, you don't have to go back in and do all the different studies on that again, because you've already got that. That's been proven in their head.
What a load of bollocks.
Yes, so you can produce your mRNA vaccines for cancer. Obviously, vaccine is in speech marks. It basically is something that they don't put as much effort in to researching again. I mean, research has been a bit of a farce over the last umpteen years anyway. That's another issue. So I went from trying to get them to say about the blood products, and then I started asking them about safe and effective, because the code of practice for pharmaceutical industry, 6.4 and 6.1, if you want to look it up, it actually states you can't use the word safe without qualification. And as a rep, I had it drummed into me, you can't call any medication safe. Because you can't. There'll be somebody, idiosyncratic reactions. You get somebody who'll be reacting to it.
Exactly.
So you can't say safe, and it states within their code of practice that the whole industry, if you're a member of the ABPI, you agree to obviously follow the code, but everybody else has a gentleman's agreement to follow the code, even if you're not a member.
So what legislation piece or what policy was that?
That's the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industries, ABPI, their own code of practice.
You cannot use the word safe.
Can't use the word safe. And the other thing that it goes on about is efficacy in terms of the absolute risk ratio and the relative risk ratio. And it actually states that the absolute risk ratio is the one that can be used on its own. The relative risk ratio can't, because it exaggerates. So if people don't understand that, if I can just quickly give
Please do.
So if you've got a trial and you've got 1,000 people on your drug, and you've got 1,000 people who are on placebo, and in your drug arm, you've actually got 1 death, and in your placebo arm, you have 2 deaths. You could say that the drug is 100% more efficient.
Yeah.
1 to 2.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is it might have saved a death in 2,000.
Exactly.
And that's where your ratios change.
Well said.
Yeah. So it's your basic understanding of statistics, really. And of course, when all the vaccines for COVID were released, for example, Pfizer, which was 95% relative risk ratio, it actually had an absolute risk ratio of 0.84%.
Great. I mean, look, I think this is actually quite an important topic, and I'm not very good at statistics. And so just for people who are really simple like me, I would say, for example, there's a disease out there and there's a risk of it killing you 2 in a million. There's a 2 in a million chance of it killing you. And they roll out a drug and say, oh, we found out that this drug now is only 1 in a million chance of you dying. So it's gone from 2 in a million to 1 in a million. That's 100%, whatever, risk reduction. It's still tiny figures. The risk is tiny to me as an individual. My risk, my absolute risk is minuscule.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy taking that 1 in a million, 2 in a million risk.
Yeah.
I don't want product. But they never said to me that my risk is 2 in a million. They just said, your risk will be reduced by 100% or whatever.
Well, don't forget there were 2 things. So on the 19th of March, I think it was downgraded, coronavirus. It was downgraded to not being of high consequence.
I know, right?
And that was a few days before we actually got locked down.
So explain that to me.
Well, I can't, can I? The government was sent that information by a committee that they set up to actually look at highly infectious diseases, and it was downgraded. And eventually, it was actually stated in Hansard, so it's recorded in Hansard, government
parliamentary records,
that it's 0.096% infection fatality rate. the coronavirus, which is minuscule.
Minuscule.
Yeah.
And those people dying are ones with multiple medical comorbidities. They're sick. There's something wrong with them. Like, more fit and healthy people didn't get COVID and die from it. They got something, but...
Well, if you look at, there's an NHS.net set of information. And the last time I saw it was the end of March 23. And that shows, in terms of people who died just of COVID, so that means there's only COVID on their death certificate, it was 6,100.
Wow.
And we weren't told that.
No, we were not. But we had the big scary red graphs and bar charts and everything. Can I just quickly read out something to you? So this is a government website about MHRA. About us. The Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency regulates medicines, medical devices and blood components for transfusion in the UK. We are the regulator. We put patients first in everything we do. Right across the life cycle of the products we regulate. We rigorously use science and data to inform our decisions, enable medical innovation, and make sure that medicines and healthcare products available in the UK are safe and effective.
Well,
What do you think of that?
They're still using safe and effective. So Alison Cave, who's the safety officer at the MHRA, every time I write to her, it comes back, it's still safe and effective. And it also comes back in terms of they talk about benefit-risk ratio. Whenever you've heard of that, it's always been a risk-benefit ratio, but not the MHRA. They put the benefits first. We can't get out of them what the benefits are, but they say that the benefit-risk ratio it remains positive.
Yeah, it's risk-benefit ratio.
Yeah, but not with the MHRA. They talk about benefit-risk. And if you ask them a question with risk-benefit, they'll come back and talk about benefit-risk.
Wow, Orwellian or what? But let's go back to what I just read out to you. They said they put patients first in everything we do, right across the life cycle of the products we regulate. But then, aren't there like freedom of information requests where they say what's in the vaccine and they don't know?
No. Yes, that's true.
So how can they know something is safe at every step of the cycle when they don't even know what the ingredients are?
They can know if it's safe if they've gone through all the information that is sent to them for licensing. So this is, I suppose, moving on to the Pfizer Moderna document analysis that I've kind of had some hand in terms of getting it to people over here. That is a lot of information that the pharmaceutical company sends to the regulator to get a license. They used to deliver them by trucks. So there's 451,000 pages of the Pfizer stuff they got originally. They've now gone back for another 1 million pages.
What the hell is in that?
Well, it's all the stuff around what they look at, the evidence that they're supposed to provide, supposed to show that it can have a license. And we know from what they've done in the States and the FDA that they call it subsumed. So they've actually got Pfizer to come in and say, oh, it's fine. Our stuff is fine. You don't need to read through the 451,000 plus 1 million pages to work it out. We're telling you it's fine.
So they're not really doing their work, are they?
No. So when, if you look back in kind of September, October 2020, they wanted to do a rolling review of the vaccines. So anything that came out, they were supposed to be giving it straight away so they could get on with looking at the evidence and coming to conclusions. And they worked on it, all three. That's Pfizer, Moderna and AstraZeneca. They worked on all three over 3 months. That was a time when the MHRA was working from home. They didn't go back till May 21. We know that from the board meetings. They were down at one point by 25% in terms of their people. So they had 1,320 people working at the MHRA, but they had lost a lot of people. Those that they were replacing with were inexperienced. They all wouldn't have been involved in regulatory bits, looking through this information. And that's what we've been led to believe, that setup allowed them to look through this information. And if anybody in the MHRA, like June Rain, says robust again, they've done a robust, it's their favourite word, they've done a robust analysis. I'd like to query that. In one of the Freedom of Information, they stated that the computers kept crashing. Now, that might be understandable because obviously they weren't used to all working at home and they obviously had to set up this link for people at home to be working on the information. If you look at the Pfizer Moderna document analysis, so I don't know if you know all about that and how it came about. So that was a group of medics and scientists who did a freedom of information to try and get the Pfizer data. And they were rejected.
Is that the one they said they would give in 75 years or something?
Eventually. So it's when Aaron Siri, who's the ICANN solicitor, when he went back and challenged it all, they were very fortunate because, of course, there's 50 judiciary setups in the States. So if you pick the right one, you have more chance of actually getting a positive outcome. So they were very lucky, or Aaron Siri is brilliant, and they managed to get released. But at that point, that's when they were, first of all, they were saying they wanted to sit on it for 55 years, and then they wanted to sit on it for 75 years. It got worse as they were trying to get it. They kept up in the ante, which means that everybody who's taken it's dead by the time you find out the information.
And do you not think if you've got something that's truly incredible and amazing, like the way they were saying it was, if you've got something totally bang whiz awesome, would you not want to be shouting about it from the rooftops and saying, look guys, look at what we've got, look what we've done? The last thing you would do is like, right, I'm just going to hide this under the bed for 75 years. I mean, that in itself just tells me something stinks.
It's incredible that they actually use that argument because that's now recorded. You know, they've admitted to the fact they wanted to sit on it.
Yeah, but why? Why did they say they wanted to sit on it for?
Because they didn't want people to see what was in it. Because, so if you compare the 1,320, which had been reduced at the MHRA, that took 3 months to work on this information, they had a release. So the FDA didn't want to release it all in one go. They thought that they couldn't redact things and what have you in that time. So it took about 18 months to get hold of it and get working on it. And I don't know if you remember, but Naomi Wolf's company, which is a digital company, took it on.
Yeah, she had an army of volunteers from around the world.
She did. So she had 3,250 they ended up with, scientists, researchers, highly published people who had got no skin in the game. It didn't matter to them. You know, they weren't being paid by anybody. They did it as a volunteer, which is all brilliant stuff. And so they had 3,250. The MHRA had 1,320 and looked through the stuff in 3 months. The Pfizer Moderna document analysis took about 18 months to do. And they've now got about 101 papers on that. So in terms of efficacy, one of the things that they looked at when they still had a placebo group were people who still had an infection or got an infection after the vaccine. And they said there were 8 in the Pfizer group, and there were 163, I think it was, it might have been 168 in the placebo group. Okay, so if you started getting the sniffles, they'd test you and they'd say whether you got the infection or not.
Based on that faulty PCR test.
Well, yes.
Which even if you just put it in water is testing positive for COVID, or vodka, or your watermelon.
Well, it can't give you a conclusive result for infection. Yeah, so all of that happened, and they basically, through forensic analysis of all the details that came through, they found 200 plus people who had been taken out the Pfizer group because they got an infection, which means now you're talking about 208 to 168.
Yeah.
But of course, there was so much information that was hidden and not actually published. And you've got to have...
But Big Pharma would never lie. They've got such a clean record. They would never do anything bad like this. They've never paid out fines and billions and covered up data, have they?
Well, Pfizer's
I'm being sarcastic.
I know. Pfizer's obviously the worst culprit.
And Merck.
And they've just won an ethics award.
What?
So, you know, it's weird. It's all everybody looking after their own. So,
but you know what? Going back to MHRA, like what I'm really disappointed in is I expect that organization, which is meant to serve the public, which is meant to be a government body looking after us, the public, protecting us from Big Pharma, I expect them to be looking at every drug, every vial, and actually sending it off for independent testing, checking what's in it, seeing whether it's safe or not just taking the word of the manufacturer, you know, not reliant on them just sending bundles and data and boxes of just millions of paper in which things can be lost. I expect them to use like their own in-house or third-party things to check everything.
They said they did, but if you talk to Headley Rees, it doesn't happen like that. The manufacturers have to test it to see that it's, each tube has the same in it. There has to be quality, and that's consistency. So, whenever you get it in the same thing. And if you then send it out to go to the MHRA's research place where they can test it all, it's been in a truck, it's been vibrated, it's been handled, etc. It's a different product from when it actually left the manufacturing unit. And the other thing they brought in during COVID...
But that's what I'm saying. Again, it's the manufacturer testing it. We're relying on their say-so. I just think, if you're going to do that, you're a bit naive to just assume that the manufacturer is going to be telling you the truth. We know that they've got a track record of lying. Andrew Wakefield's movie Protocol 7 shows that they're happy fudging the numbers when necessary. And they're happy to overlook data that's not favourable, whether it's the Vioxx scandal or whatever. Surely the MHRA, if I know this, the MHRA should know this, so they should be not relying just on what they should say, right, to Big Pharma, right, send us your studies and tests. Now we're going to corroborate that with our own studies and make sure, it's the same. Is that not just basic?
You'd think so.
Duty of due diligence?
Duty of care for the patients and everything. But it wasn't done like that. Nothing was done like it was supposed to be. For a kick-off, they were using virtual inspections of the manufacturing unit. So they got this new fangled AI system whereby they could go virtually into the manufacturing unit. And, what would you do as a manufacturer? You'd show them the bits that you wanted them to see, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would make sure that if there's skeletons in a cupboard, don't take them to the cupboard. Hey, just another quick interruption. Folks, as some of you may know, I've launched my consultation service where I act as your health advocate and educator. I've got over 25 years of experience as a doctor and orthopedic surgeon. I know both the public and the private healthcare systems intimately, having worked in both. And I'm now working independently to support you navigate the sick care system. So if you're facing uncertainty about your health, you're struggling to make sense of conflicting advice, or simply just want clarity before making a medical decision, this consultation is for you. If you want to cut through all the jargon, the gobbledygook, I can distill out exactly what your diagnosis means, what your options are, and I can cut through all the jargon, and I can interpret tests and scans to make sense for you. I can help you understand your diagnosis and your medical treatment plan and suggest to you what other options are available as well. I can help you decide which practitioner to see, whether you should go and see an osteopath, an acupuncturist, a homeopath, a herbal medicine person, which physician. I can help you with that. I can also help you in terms of preparing for surgery, how to minimize your risks of complications, minimize pain, and optimize healing, and also minimize post-operative complications, what steps you can take to reduce that. And even more importantly, in this time and day and age, help you get an informed consent from your surgeon. So if you are planning on having an operation, I can coach you and tell you what questions I would ask of any surgeon and make sure in that way that you get an informed consent. And if it's none of that, but you simply want to lose weight or optimize your sleep or have an introduction into intermittent fasting, I can help you manage chronic conditions and introduce lifestyle and dietary changes. I can explore holistic options with you to support your well-being. And it's all about asking the right questions. I can help empower you with the knowledge so that you make better decisions for yourself and your loved ones. So folks, these sessions are educational and informative only. I'm not acting as your doctor. I'm not treating and diagnosing you. I am empowering you with clarity and confidence. If this resonates with you, then book an appointment with me. Visit docmalik.com/consultations. Just visit my website. And maybe not today, but if at some point in the future you need to go see a doctor or one of your family or loved ones, think about booking a consultation with me first so that you get the best out of anything that you're going to do in the healthcare system. Okay, folks, back to the podcast. Enjoy.
So it's all not being done as it used to be done. And of course, when I was repping many moons ago, I was taken, we all had our own manufacturing units. Ours was up in Newcastle. So I was taken up to Newcastle and we looked at a bit of surgery. We were trained while we were there. We looked at how they manufactured the stuff we were going to sell and what have you. It was all part of the same company. Now, every bit of it is outsourced.
I know, I've heard that from Headley.
It's really, really bad because there's no consistency. And don't forget, this time, it's the first time we've had multi-dose vials. So we've got frozen stuff, the mRNA, that is wrapped in these lipid particles, frozen. And what we've got to do is transport them, and it's very sensitive to vibration. We've got to transport them. And then there was this thing, it's got to be at a certain temperature.
Yeah.
But then that changed.
Yeah, that disappeared out the window.
And the NHS didn't have delivery trucks that could go to the temperatures that were supposed to be got to. So they couldn't do what they said they were going to do anyway. So what happened was they were delivered to the centres with people. I could have volunteered. You could have volunteered. Anybody could have volunteered to inject. They weren't given very much training on it. They had to add in the saline. And because of the vibration problems, you had to do this. You had to mix it. And a lot of them looked it up on Google because there was no normal operating procedure for each of these things. It wasn't written out and given to everybody as to what to do, which is incredible considering it's a brand new way of doing things. They just had to turn the vial 10 times. And within that was 5 measures of the vaccine. Now, how well mixed was it? And according to Headley, you're supposed to look at it after it's defrosted, and you're supposed to, once it's mixed, and then what's in the test tube, what's in the actual injection itself. Is the first one the same as the 5th one? Some people were given the whole thing.
I know. It's a bit weird. And I've spoken to Headley about this, and it's opened my eyes to the whole big pharma thing.
Yeah.
So basically, I was, like you just stated, I thought the pharmaceutical company did everything. It did the research, it did the manufacturing, the quality control, then it did the marketing, the branding, and the distribution. Little did I know it's now just a front. And basically, they've got these research centres that they partner up with the universities and the hospitals. And really, it's just a big, massive marketing, branding, legal department. And all the manufacturing is just outsourced.
Yeah, especially with Biopharm. So Biopharm, you've got your probably 10 or 12 scientists who've started this small company with cell and gene technology, and they're working on it. And then if they need anything producing, they'll go somewhere that can produce it for them. If they need then to test that in a trial, they'll go somewhere else. And they don't have to employ all these hundreds of people as we used to in the past.
Right. So, look, very simple statement. MHRA has failed in its duty, which is on the website, black and white, that they're going to protect the public and make sure all products from the beginning to the end are safe for the public. They've not done that. They've not done that.
No.
And they've put us in harm's way. And now, not having done what they should have done to make sure that it's as safe as possibly can be, or at least outline the risk, because nothing is 100% safe, they've now used that failed benchmark to now say, well, we know mRNA tech is safe and effective. Anything else that's using mRNA tech is safe and effective. Instead of saying, right, actually, it's now a cancer vaccine or this drug vaccine or this drug mRNA, we need to go back to the drawing board and check the bioavailability, biodistribution, toxicity levels, effects on pregnancy, breastfeeding, whatever. None of that is looked at now.
Because if you've got a genetic product and you've got a vaccine, it goes through.
I'm just going to pause for a sec. Right. Sorry. So they never did the testing for this.
No, the whole thing has been rushed through. It's been the pharma companies who said this is okay because we're in an emergency. Nothing else could be used for that emergency infection. You couldn't use your ivermectin and your hydroxychloroquine and what have you. That was all stopped because we had to go with this vaccine. All the vaccines used the same thing. They were all based on spike, which is a bit peculiar if you've got these companies, competing with each other. They're all using spike, which was very toxic. It was the most toxic part of the organism.
So explain that to me as well. I've said this a million times and I don't understand. I was a foot and ankle surgeon. But to me, it's bloody obvious that if we go by what they say, that the most dangerous part was the spike protein. That's what's causing the illness and the disease. Why the hell would you then want to make that in your body by your own cells, being little factories, churning out the very toxic part?
But they didn't say that to people, did they? They said it stayed in your arm, which we know isn't true.
It's not true.
And they had distribution studies, but they didn't actually publish them and make people aware of them. It just stayed in your arm.
And they've said that. I don't know who the hell was it that said that. Why is that person or those people not being held responsible now for lying to us?
Well, the whole thing's been a lie, hasn't it? Because not only is the spike toxic, the lipid nanoparticles are terrible. They shouldn't be used in humans. With my links to the Pfizer Moderna document analysis, one of their researchers was very much into LNPs. So he sent me all the studies that were around on that. And all you had to do was go to the conclusions and look at the words you could pull out of that.
I've seen them. I've done it.
Oncogenic, toxic, the whole lot. And so you know that the whole thing is a disaster for the body.
Just for those who haven't done what you and I have done, which is to go to the papers and go straight to conclusion, what were the findings of LNP tech?
Basically, that it's toxic. It is oncogenic, so it causes cancer. It is highly inflammatory. And all these things are things you don't want. So it hasn't got anything to say for itself. And in the information he sent me through, there was a picture of a little pack of LNP. And on it says in big letters, not for human use.
Wow. Right, listen, Cheryl, I'm not putting you down or me down, but look, you and I just think, like, we're just normal people, right? Off the street, relatively smart. We still read, which is more than a lot of people. But we're not like Nobel Prize winning type, Nobel laureates, We don't have titles. We're not Sir this or Dame that. But we know a lot of this is a crock of shit. What I'm trying to understand is, how are the people at the top, like the MHRA, Dame Jane, whatever, and Patrick Vallance, Chief Scientific Officer, Chris Whitty, Chief Medical Officer, how come they don't know what we know? How come they aren't going, we can't roll out this mRNA tech to everybody. It's, we've not done enough work on it. It's a bit dodgy. It's a bit dangerous. Explain this to me, because I really struggle with this.
It's money. It's got to be money. It's got to be they're being paid and then they're promoted and put into bigger, better paid jobs. And they keep going upwards and onwards, don't they?
That's it.
As far as I can see. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, June Rain is a mother and a grandmother. How does she live with herself? How does she sleep at night?
This is what I'm trying to say.
I don't get it. I mean, I can't give you an explanation. I don't know what's in their head. But I mean, in terms of protecting us, which is what you were talking about before, and the yellow card system, it's not easy to fill in a yellow card.
It's not.
Okay, so people can't be bothered, but if you've got something like a death, if you've got something that is serious, then you would be inclined to fill it in.
When was the yellow card system introduced?
You keep asking me dates. I'm hopeless on dates.
I'm going to look it up.
Look it up.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, is it 60 years? It's 60 years they've just celebrated, because that came in with thalidomide.
Is that right?
Yeah. And now they're trying to do it all digitally. But when you actually look at the yellow card site, you might not get these completely right.
1964. Right. The reason why I'm saying this to you, because it's relevant. In 1964, in the wake of the thalidomide disaster, you're right, by the way, the yellow card system was established in the UK to collect suspected adverse drug reactions. Okay. So the reason why I'm mentioning this to you is I'm a doctor. I went to med school from 93 to 98. Yellow cards were introduced in 1964.
Well established by then.
I only knew about the yellow card system during COVID.
Yes.
And the vaccine introduced. I'm telling you, as a medical student, as a junior doctor, as a consultant, I was not aware of the yellow card system. I was not told at any point, if you prescribe a drug and there's a safety incident or whatever, adverse reaction, fill in this form and send it to us.
I knew.
Did you know that?
I knew because...
Do you not think that's shocking? As a doctor, I was never taught that.
Yes. But pharmacovigilance is one of the things I teach. And that's telling reps in particular who are meeting doctors how they can get involved in getting the information back to the pharma company and whoever, so that these things are recorded. So they're aware of yellow card. But patients aren't. But in COVID, there were more patients sending them in than doctors.
Wow.
So, but what it says when
So
you
the
go
reps knew, but a lot of doctors don't know. So I'm not alone. I don't think I'm alone. I don't think I'm an
It was in the
anomaly.
back of the BNF when you had a book.
Exactly.
There were places where in MIMS and what have you, you could get the yellow. It was a yellow card, physical yellow card that you could get from the back of these books. So you could get hold of one.
By the way, so look, some people might be saying, well, you're an orthopedic surgeon, you know jack shit about drugs and everything. There's a joke, actually. What's the difference in an orthopedic surgeon and a prostitute?
What?
A prostitute knows the name of more than one antibiotic. So,
I can tell you a story about me going to see my first consultant when I was a rep, and absolutely terrified I was. And he happened to be an orthopaedic surgeon up in Leeds.
Tell me.
And he wanted to see me at 4:45 on a Friday afternoon, which is when reps are normally at home filling in the paperwork.
Okay.
And I thought, no, I'm new and I'm going to impress and I'll go and see him. So I went in, shown into this little room. There were Danish pastries in a big plate and kind of this pot of coffee, but I didn't dare take it because I hadn't been offered it. So I sat sitting there. He took about 45 minutes to come in. And then he sat there for probably about 10 minutes and told me he didn't use drugs. And he completely, every time I tried to mention something that I was supposed to mention, because that's what my job was, I was paid to do that, he completely cut me down. Yes, so I had a funny feeling about orthopedics. But yeah, so...
it's strange that he called you in then.
He wanted to have a go at me.
Okay.
Yeah. So there you go. It's a bit nasty, really.
Okay, but
it was certainly one way of learning.
Well, from orthopedic surgeons, I'm sorry, you had that experience.
You had more sense. You probably had more in common with the Black & Decker lot.
Yeah. So, but tell me something. Step out of MHRA for a bit, right? You tell me you're training drug reps and this and that. You know, there's a pill for every ill, but there's never really a cure. I mean, do you not look back and think, what was I selling and pushing? Like, what did actually help? Everything from whether it's low sec and omeprazole, PPIs are through the roof. You know what? There's acid in the stomach for a reason. Or let's take SSRIs. You know, it's not about dopamine, serotonin, depression, anxiety. You need to get through to trauma and other deeper issues. It's not about giving them drugs so that they then feel nothing and have PSSD and whatnot.
I mean, my classic one to talk about is statins.
Statins?
I mean, statins, what would you do? You talk about atheroma in vessels. So what would you do to see what was causing it? You cut into the atheroma to see what it is. It's actually blood clots. It's not actually cholesterol. And if you cut down your cholesterol, you cut it down to the brain, you bring on dementia.
And the cholesterol is like the fire truck at the scene of a fire. It's not the arsonist.
No. And of course, what they've done as well is they've changed the level at which you put on these things.
Yes.
So it keeps coming down. So I think I don't know what the unit is, but it used to be about 300. It's now about 150 before they start putting you on it. And then they were going to add a blood pressure tablet, the latest brilliant idea, blood pressure tablet with a statin.
Yeah. Well
let's give it to everybody, whether they've got a problem or not.
Remember I said to you when I was on the phone, I was like, where are you? How long are you going to be? I might be a little bit late. The reason why is I should have been here at 11:30, but I got here at 5 minutes before 12. The reason why is because my butcher was just telling me his life history. I've got a habit of just saying hi to people, and then suddenly people just want to tell me everything. So he's telling me about how his blood pressure's gone up a little bit because his mum's got cancer, and the GP wants to give him blood pressure medication and also a statin and a PPI, but he doesn't want to do that because he listened to my podcast and he thinks it's all right to have high blood pressure because his mum's got cancer after all. And so he's telling me all this, and it's like, yeah, this is what's happening. All the doctors are being incentivized to get people on blood pressure medication, statins, PPIs.
Test and prescribe, test and prescribe, test and prescribe.
And there's a quota. If you get a certain percentage, then you get a bonus. The practice gets a bonus. It's all about cha-ching-ching.
Which we thought was terrible in the States, but it's happening here.
It's here. So what I'm trying to say is when you look back at your career in Big Pharma, do you kind of think, oh God.
I think it was a lot better when I was in it.
Really? But were there any drugs that were really good?
Because we were all... we did our own thing. You were self-contained as a pharmaceutical company. It wasn't outsourced and what have you. I don't know. I mean, perhaps I'm kidding myself.
What drugs were you then selling that were actually good?
The big one that came out was danazol, which was a male hormone for endometriosis. And it was also for benign breast disease as well. So that was big at the time. We had Hexapal. Hexapal was donkey's years old. It was basically an anti-inflammatory. No, it wasn't. My brain's gone. It was.
How'd you spell it?
Hexapal. It's probably not in there anymore. So what they found out, one of the side effects was if you had impotence, it helped you. So it increased blood flow. So that's right, it increased blood flow. That's what it's not inflamed.
Hexapal 40.
Yeah, so it increases blood flow. So it was used for vibration white finger, which most people think is a funny
It's
term.
discontinued.
It probably is. So, but it worked very well for that. And the other thing it worked well for was impotence, because it increased the blood flow. So before Viagra and anything, donkey's years before that, they could have made a fortune out of that.
But do you see what I mean? But look, what I'm trying to say is, if they were so good, why is it discontinued?
Because there's other things that's taken over.
I'm a bit skeptical. What I'm just trying to say is, like, I just feel like a lot of the natural remedies have been overlooked. So I've had a neck injury and a disc prolapse. You know what? I've been having acupuncture and homeopathy. It's really helped.
A lot of people.
You know what? But you know what doctors would want to give me? Things like oxycodone.
Yeah.
Get me drugged up, addicted to things.
Well, getting rid of the pain isn't getting rid of the problem, is it?
It's not.
And that's what you. But you see, I've hardly ever taken anything myself.
So, being a drug pusher, you never took any drugs?
No. Well, you actually were a hypochondriac, or you took everything.
All right, listen, you did a freedom. Okay, look, I don't mean to give you a hard time. I'm just saying, like, looking back, do you look at your career and think, what was I selling and pushing?
I only did it for 4 or 5 years.
All right, well, I'll let you off the hook.
You let me off?
I'll let you off the hook. You know what, can I be honest with you? As a surgeon, as a doctor, I look back and think, man, I was taught such a load of garbage.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So you've no room to speak.
You know, it's funny, I was talking about the fact that Zach Cox was saying where you are not so long ago. He's a dentist now, training as a barrister. I was like, you know what? I don't remember ever being taught any lecture on vaccines or why they're safe or, and good for us. No studies, nothing, ingredients, adjuvants, never mentioned anything. We were churned out after 5-6 years of med school just with the belief that vaccines are amazing without actually being told anything.
And that's what's happened throughout the whole of the last 5 years. You can't say anything against them because they work. And it's like I've been indoctrinated. This is what I believe, even though you've never seen any evidence to back it up.
Yeah. And it's the same with dentists and fluoride. So I said to him, when you went for dental school, did they explain to you why fluoride is great and what the toxicity of it is like, and any evidence to show? He goes, no, actually, Ahmed, none. You just came out think, yeah, fluoride in the toothpaste, fluoride in the water, fluoride is good for you. It's this mass indoctrination.
You're told, and why would you query it? And that's the thing that's the last few years has started to do. So I think Zach worked with Dolores Carhill to start off with.
Maybe, I don't know.
Who was one of the first people I started listening to. And so hers was hydroxychloroquine. So I had sold that. And when they started going on about it causing heart problems, I thought, well, that's not right, because any of the DMARDs, the disease-modifying rheumatics, you had to go and have tests done. So we had to have contacts with the ophthalmologist because you had to warn them that if the hospital took this, they were going to have to do more eye tests. So I knew it had problems with retinitis, but not with anything to do with your heart. And it's those sort of things that keep coming together and you think, this isn't right.
This isn't right.
No.
So one of the other things you did was you looked at freedom of information, AstraZeneca, am I right?
Yes, didn't get anywhere with that. I tried to copy the Americans. Slow me trying to copy the Americans. So when you look at what they'd done to get hold of Pfizer data, I got heart, because I needed a respected group of doctors and what have you to actually back up my request to get the information. So I followed what they did in the States, and I had a lawyer who badged it and everything. So it looked very good. And I asked for everything that they'd put. So it's called the Common Technical Document, is what this large number of pages are. So it's the same for every regulator. So we didn't need to ask MHRA for the Pfizer stuff, because we'd already got that from the States.
Right.
So this was AstraZeneca, which obviously the Brits had more of a...
Saying.
So that's
Oxford-AstraZeneca.
Yes, so that's what I went after. And of course it was too big, too much, couldn't do it because poor little devils would be up all night actually redacting and what have you, and they couldn't possibly do that. It would cost too much money to get the information out.
Oh, hold on a second. Is that a get-out clause for freedom of information? I thought freedom of information is you've got the freedom to get the information. I didn't know there was clauses where, if it's too difficult, then I'm afraid we're not going to do it.
They can tell you whether they've got the information or not, and then they can tell you what they're relying on as an exemption to not give it you. So the Air and Siri in the States did go back and try and ask for the MHRA for some AstraZeneca stuff, and he was told to come back and ask for less. And he did. I mean, the thing is, what do you ask for? Because you've got 5 parts to the common technical document, and there's a lot in each part. So where do you go in? Where do you start? And he got a little bit of stuff, but you can't do it by piecemeal. You can't do it bit by bit.
Tell me about what you think of the AstraZeneca Oxford little thing. I think it's very suspect that the person, Oxford has got a weird place in all this. Oxford, Imperial, these places are the dens of the devil. They all prostitute themselves and their names to Big Pharma. They give the legitimacy to Big Pharma to carry out their criminal acts and sell their, toxic products. Because guess what? Some professor or department at Oxford or Imperial gave it a badge of approval. Does that make sense? So Big Pharma will give them the money and the grants to do the research. They provide the research papers to say, look how great this is. Big Pharma goes back and then throws around all the research papers saying, look, see, this is the evidence we needed to prove that our product is amazing. But it's all just, they're lining each other's pockets.
You've got to, your research papers should be reproducible, and they're not. And that's a major problem with the clinical papers that we see. And obviously they start publishing the best bits, which are not very good sometimes, but they still produce their best bits. So it's this reproducibility that is a problem, because that's what we should be able to see. And you've got the triangle, haven't you? You've got Oxford, Cambridge and London.
Exactly.
But, I mean, it's all come to a fore with this vaccine-induced thrombocytopenia. And there was a female professor, who got in touch with the MHRA right at the beginning of noticing this, at the beginning of 21. And they were ignored. And other countries were noticing it. And other countries actually took it off the market or took it down for a while. But we didn't. It was like it couldn't fail. We've produced this. We need this. It's going to be kept being used.
So can I just read something to you? Screen share, okay? This is from Oxford. The story behind Oxford-AstraZeneca, COVID-19. You can look up UK Research and Innovation, ukri.org, who we are. And it's the story, and it talks about Professor Sarah Gilbert.
Yeah. She's the one at Wimbledon.
Yeah, lovely face. Professor of Vaccinology at the Jenner Institute. Right, she talks about 2 billion dosages have been developed by University of Oxford and AstraZeneca, released to more than 170 countries.
And they stopped it once they'd used it all up.
So just say that a bit clearer, what?
They stopped it when they'd used it all up.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? And it was, when they stopped it, they rolled it back slowly. There wasn't any fanfare. Oh, by the way, it's been withdrawn. There's safety concerns. It was just suddenly not available anymore. Did you notice that? They can't hear you.
Sorry, yes.
Because you're on screen share right now.
I'm nodding.
Yeah, you're nodding.
I'm nodding.
So, what concerns me is, for example, this person moving at speed. People often think of vaccine development as being all about immunology, but we need to think about the manufacturing side as well. It was very important that we create a safe and effective vaccine. We had to make it in very large quantities for a low price. Not only that, we had to ensure it could be stored in the fridge to be used in a wide range of global health situations. We spent a lot of time planning how to move as quickly as possible. This has included speeding up the lengthy quality control processes required during vaccine manufacture without compromising safety. I'm sure you've got something to say about that. I co-direct the multidisciplinary Future Vaccine Manufacturing Research Hub, VaxHub, supported by the UKRI's Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. This turned out to be critical for getting the project off the ground quickly, highlighting the importance of funding large-scale, collaborative vaccine manufacturing research. AstraZeneca have also hugely contributed, shouldering much of the large-scale manufacturing burden. What this all sounds to me is massive conflicts of interest, because the head of the JCVI, based in Oxford, rubbing shoulders with this person, also head of the Vaccine Jenner Institute, also head of the, Vax Hub. I mean, it sounds like they've got, it's like the fox guarding the chicken coop.
It is. And the MHRA have got conflicts of interest. And they always talk about them at the beginning of the meetings. There's quite a lot of them. I couldn't tell you exactly which one's which, but it's...
Well, then give me some examples. There must be some rough examples you can give. There's that many.
it's generally just links to the pharmaceutical industry and the payments that they get from the pharmaceutical industry as well. It's not just that they're linked; they're actually on payments from them.
So hold on a second. So MHRA is funded 86% by Big Pharma. So it's not the government. Are you talking about individuals within the MHRA are also funded?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
No, because they've got links to other parts. So that's how they've got on the board of the MHRA. They've got links.
I'm going to look this up.
I mean, there's one lady, Raj, and she worked for the WHO.
Okay.
And links to the Bill and Melinda Gates comes into it.
So hold on, when these people are on the board of the MHRA, isn't that their full-time job? Or are you telling me that they've got other jobs as well?
They've got other jobs. No, it's an executive committee and non-execs as well. It's just a committee.
So are we talking about like the Commission on Human Medicines? That kind of board? Which kind of like boards are we talking about?
The Commission on Human Medicines is completely separate from the MHRA.
Oh, okay.
They work together, supposedly, to tell us that the vaccines are safe. That's one thing that... And then the Committee on Human Medicines has these expert working groups. So in terms of my monitor, which I can say, so that's the yellow card vaccine monitor that I've got a case with. Initially, as part of my Freedom of Information, they gave me an interim report. So I was asking for information on pregnancy. They gave me an interim report, and that was a report that was presented to a CHM committee, the Pharmacovigilance Expert Working Group. And what their remit is to assess risk. And in the monitor, this interim report, it said that 41% of pregnant women had at least one side effect. So there's nothing to see here. And that was from an expert working group. We didn't find out what they'd said when it was presented to them. There were no changes made to pregnancy and whether it could be used in pregnancy. That is these expert working groups. And they work so slowly, if there is a problem, it takes a long time to actually treat it as a risk, treat it as a problem.
Okay, let's go back to the board business, right? I'm going to share a screen. Sadly, you can't see it, but it's the MHRA senior leadership structure. It's out of date. It's 2023. But I just want to explain. So at the top, you've got Chief Executive Officer June Rain. Then you've got the Chief Science, Research and Innovation Officer Mark Bailey, the Interim Executive Director of Healthcare Quality and Access Julian Breach, Laura Square MedTech Regulatory Reform Lead, Chief Safety and Surveillance Officer Alison Cave. And then underneath them, they've got all these deputies. Those people are working fully for MHRA.
Some are, yeah.
They don't have other additional roles, do they?
Some do. I mean, the non-execs certainly will. So I can send it to you as the list of conflicts of interest. But everybody within the industry has got conflicts of interest, whichever committee and what have you come to. I mean, Per Mohammed, who heads up the Committee on Human Medicines, he's got lots of conflicts of interest. In fact, you know how they released the expert working group minutes?
No.
Well, they released them by accident, I think. And it was mentioned by Esther McVeigh in Parliament, and then they were taken down. And she asked for them to be put back up, and they have been put back up. And of each set of minutes, there's probably about 3 or 4 pages that's conflicts of interest. But the first meeting of that we got minutes on, there were 80 people at the meeting. How can you have a meeting with 80 people? It's not run properly. It's not run as a normal committee would be in a private company.
Okay, let's go back. MHRA, right? Some people would say it's kind of normal and understandable that there'll be people in the MHRA or non-executive committee who have got a background in Big Pharma because of that knowledge that they have. They're in a better place to scrutinise Big Pharma.
But the board doesn't make any decisions that are on licensing and what have you. They're there to see the running of the MHRA itself.
So would you think basically anybody outside of Big Pharma experience could do that job?
Yeah,
I think so too.
But we've got the new chair of the replacement for June Rain is a Lawrence Talon.
Okay, what's his story?
He's a civil servant.
So he doesn't have a Big Pharma background?
Doesn't have pharma background or anything. So he's obviously involved in the running of the organisation and spending that money and making sure they talk about all...
But is that a good thing or a bad thing, coming from the civil service?
It's it's what they're trying to do that's bad. It's this rushing through of every product within the 90 to 100 days. That's what's bad, but that's where they're going with everything. And yes, on Tuesday when the board meeting was on,
90 to 100 days they want to get things out.
Yeah.
I've read about this. Debbie's talked about this. It's shocking.
It's terrible.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. They're doing
impossible.
Yes. And it's this, as we've said already, it's, MHRA vaccines is a new technology that's safe and effective. So we can keep using it for cancer products or whatever we want to do. And the thing
flu vaccine, childhood vaccines.
Yeah, amalgamate all the vaccines. Yeah. And all of them will become mRNA unless we stop it. I mean, my message to everybody is don't take anything mRNA and, kind of resist. But you see, when people have got a cancer and they're told they've got a cancer, whether it be right or not, and they're told that they've got to have this treatment because it's the only way they'll survive, they'll have it.
You're right about that. And that's what's really disappointed me. I've talked about this on social media and my podcast, and I've said, look, folks, don't take the mRNA jabs. And I'm shocked by the number of people who go, oh, I never had any of the COVID mRNA shots, but if I've got cancer, I'll go ahead and use the mRNA if there's good studies to show. I was like, but what?
You can't actually do what they're trying to do.
But what I'm trying to say is there are so-called awake people who did not take the COVID mRNA shot, but when it comes to cancer, they go, well, yeah, I might take it then.
Yeah, well,
because of fear. It's fear, basically.
Yeah, but let's look at it a bit more. If you've got 19,000 genes, okay, well, we thought there was going to be a lot more, but there's only about 19,000, and they make about 2 million functional protein being a protein that does something.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that you tend with illness to want to try and influence. It means that a gene isn't just looking after one protein. And that's why things go wrong. So you take in prostaglandin, for example, is involved in inflammation. It's also protective of the gastric tract. So if you take something that's anti-prostaglandin that actually reduces it down, so you get anti-inflammatory effects, you're going to get an ulcer. And all these things they're multifaceted. It was J.J. Couey who gave one of the best quotes about how ridiculous we are thinking that we can do this, thinking that our immune system is so simple, we can just put a jab in and everything will be fine. Yes. And we know from the last 4 years, that's not true. And that's the thing that people have to understand. What they're telling you can't actually happen. It won't work.
I agree. But is this a case of they actually genuinely believe their own lies or hubris? Or is this, again, just driven by money? That, Headley, I spoke to him. He said, I'm not sure about his theory. He thinks everything is about money. He says Big Pharma was on its knees. There's no such thing as a blockbuster drug anymore. Everything's almost off patent. And he goes, there's no grand conspiracy. It's basically bad people in Big Pharma, especially in Britain. And he said there's huge conflicts of interest between the civil service, scientists, doctors, and Big Pharma, and they're all meeting and they're all on the boards, and they're the ones who colluded. All these Big Pharma companies colluded to create this vaccine pandemic, basically for money. And he goes, it's not governments, it's not bad people, it's not philanthropists, it's all just Big Pharma collusion. I find that hard.
Which these new vaccine cancer drugs are. It's $500,000 a go. And you're talking about individualised, supposedly. They're kidding you that they're making it just for you, which they're not capable of doing, especially in hospital pharmacies, which is where they're supposed to go in to make them. So it's something that they are trying to make a lot of money from. The NHS can't support that anyway. It can't afford stuff that costs $500,000 a shot. And some of these things that have been used for a while, and there's been 30 years of this technology, they've never got it right. And it's actually producing secondary cancers. It's not getting rid of the cancer. It's producing secondary cancers because, like I said about the genes and the proteins, you're having these effects and they're not looking at what other effects it might cause if we put that into your body.
I think it's also very naive to think it's all genes. I've spoken to people like David Rasnick, and he said, Ahmed, remember the Human Genome Project? And they said once they've cracked the human genome, they'll crack all diseases and have all these cures and everything will be fixed. Because that's all gone very quiet.
Well, do you remember?
Because you know why? Because it's not about the genes.
No.
It's not. Like, if you take illness and disease, maybe less than 5% are down to your genetics. The rest is epigenetics, lifestyle, toxins, deficiencies. That's stress.
And we're not the only genes in the body, because we've got a hell of a lot of bacteria, 10 to 1 in terms of our cells,
Yeah.
that are affecting the whole thing. So that's another thing that you can add into the mix that might send things funny.
Absolutely.
And obviously your biome is a very important part of you and your immunity. We need a balance. And anything you take in of these things is going to really upset your body balance. You're sighing now. I made you upset.
Oh, it's just these.
It's soul destroying. I mean, years ago when they'd done the DNA analysis and we were told, did we want to get our genes analysed? Did we want to get our own genome tested? And yet people started saying no, because if that says I'm going to die of a heart attack in 10 years' time, I'm not going to get a mortgage. I'm not going to get insurance and all those sorts of things. That's not knowing. And now it's just become common everyday analysis that we supposedly are getting a lot from. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah, okay. But listen, I'm not a buyer into this. It's just big pharma colluding amongst themselves to create this pandemic. I just think it goes much higher than that.
Well, it's been talked about at the higher echelons in terms of a pandemic would achieve what or move us down the path they want us to go along.
What do you mean?
So in terms of control, so in terms of starting to control people, which of course a lot of people were controlled over the last 4 or 5 years. You've already said that people will already start taking these cancer vaccines, even if they didn't want the other ones. It's all to do with building control. So if you've got a controlled populace, you can do more with them. You can make them do what you might be planning all along, the overall picture of what you want to do.
I think COVID showed that they can do pretty much whatever they like, didn't it?
Well, it depends what percentage you believe actually took the shots and how many people are awake. And you don't need enormous percentages to be awake to start making your voice heard. But yeah, it can be soul destroying at times when you think that people are just not waking up to this.
Yeah. What else have you discovered in the MH?
They try and put people off giving them the yellow card. Well, they're trying to increase the number of people who fill in the yellow card reports. They're doing everything to try and encourage that. They're putting them on the NHS app, which Debbie will tell you, don't take the NHS app.
So they want you to fill in the form.
They want you to fill in the forms. But while we sat at the board meeting, you can ask them questions. So I did. And I basically said, once you've got these filled in, especially when you've got a death, what do you do about it? And my question didn't get asked. They ignored my question because they don't want to do anything with the information they've got. They're just asking for the information, so they've done it. And so this pharmacovigilance is not being done. And that does your head in, because these are the people that are supposed to be protecting the public from any side effect that comes along. I mean, we've all asked questions about how many people have to die before you stop a preparation. And in the past, the 76 flu vaccine, that had about 24 people who died to start off with before they stopped it. And the pandemics in 2000 and
the narcolepsy.
Yeah, that had about 50 eventually that died, and they stopped it. So 50 was kind of seen as, it doesn't matter how many you give out. It doesn't matter if the whole world's had it. 50 is too many people to have lost. And we're way past that. I mean, you've got Brett Weinstein and what have you saying it's enormously high. Ed Dowd, I like Ed Dowd. I think he's come up with some very, very good information. And he's basically said it's about 15 million that have died worldwide.
It's certainly a lot.
It's a lot of people. How many people? I mean, I keep meeting friends. I'm not going to any more funerals. I'm fed up of going to funerals. It must be my age.
Well, I don't know about that. Well, it must be my age. I'm hitting 50 this summer, and I'm telling everyone I meet, go, oh yeah, my relatives got cancer, bladder cancer, this cancer, colon cancer, heart cancer. Never heard of a heart cancer before. Autoimmune conditions. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Yeah. It's quite, and people are not, the thing is, the longer it goes out from when the injections were given, especially if you only had the first 2, possibly 3, then you don't make the link. And that is a problem. But, I mean, it's that
temporal time bomb, isn't it? It's ticking away. And then it's like, oh, well, it's nothing to do with that.
As most deaths happened within the first 1 or 2 days after you'd taken it. I mean, Ed Dowd, he's done our figures, because our NHS figures, our ONS figures are actually quite good. So he's done all his US ones and some other countries, but he's done a lot on the UK. And when we had him on an interview, he was talking about hospital staff sickness, which is exponentially going off the scale. And obviously that's 1.8 million people. So you've got a good base there. And then he started to talk about the PIP, the disability benefit that we're talking about now. And I don't believe that people are swinging the lead. I believe that people are ill. I mean, if you fill in a PIP documentation, it takes you thought yellow card was bad enough. It takes you a long time to fill it in and put all the details down to actually try and get some support.
And it's not even much.
No. And he said that in 2020, it had gone up about 3%, the PIP disability applications. And then by 21, it went up about 20 odd %. And by 22, it had gone up 75%. And his comment was, this is a black swan event and the government will not be able to keep affording paying it out. And where are we now? The data's there. They've made people ill and now they're refusing to pay them. I'm not cheering you up, am I?
No, it's making me really sad.
It is very sad. And people are walking into this and they don't know what they're walking into.
Right, so how much revolving doors is taking place at the MHRA? How many of these people that are on board members end up working for Big Pharma and vice versa? Does that happen much?
Oh yeah, not just Big Pharma. They go to Bill and Melinda Gates and they go to the WHO and they go to other places as well. But it's all one big club, isn't it? It's all linked. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if June Rain retires, whether she goes somewhere. We don't know whether she'll go to the International Regulation Organisation, whatever it be called. So regulators get together and there's a body.
Just like the GMC.
It's like they're all singing to the same hymn sheet, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know the GMC, the Medical Licensing Board? Bruce Dooley was on my podcast talking about this, how there's a Federation of States Medical Licensing Boards, FSMB or something, in Dallas, Texas. And at that same building is the headquarters for the International Medical Regulatory whatever agency. And that's GMC and New Zealand Council of Medicine and Zimbabwe and Pakistan and all of them. And the head of the New Zealand one is the head of the international one. And that's how they were treating all dissident doctors the same way. Yeah. Anonymous complaints, suspensions, protracted investigations, kangaroo court tribunals, disgrace, sacked, name plastered in the media. And it was like, wherever you went in the world, I'm speaking to all these doctors and I'm like, well, hold on a second. Jackie Stone in Zimbabwe, doctors in Singapore, doctors in New Zealand, Australia and Canada and America and Britain and Ireland. Why are we all being treated the same way? And it's like, because they all get the same marching orders at their international meeting get together. Yeah. It's the same with the medical regulatory body as well. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the whole thing is, I think that it's very interesting to see where all this is going, because it's such a, I think I've gone, can I have stop a minute?
Yeah, of course you can.
Sorry, I can't. Oh.
Of course you can. Resume. Right, you stopped. You were saying something.
So we're just saying that all these international bodies are singing to the same hymn sheet. Everybody's doing the same thing because this has been a global thing. So, I mean, we've got the Hudson's razor, haven't we? Nick Hudson. So he says anything that's a global crisis that has a global solution where the dissenters are censored, it's a scam or a hoax or whatever you want to call it. Because we've all been pulled together to do the same thing at the same time. And a lot of people in England are not looking elsewhere. They're thinking it's just happening here. So there's somebody on the radio this morning as I was driving here who was saying that when we're talking about PIP, disability payments, this is only happening in Britain. This is actually us being skivers and all the rest of it and what have you. And you just think to yourself, well, Ed Dowd will tell you that 3 million extra people in the States have become disabled over the last few years.
It's shocking.
It's shocking, but they don't see these data. I mean, I keep sending it people on X, but I'm not doing much good. You want people to know these data. They don't get it.
You do. Right. So I found something called the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities. You heard about this?
Yeah, that's
Is that their?
that's where a Jew might go.
That's where she might go.
But we don't know. We don't know, do we? She might be taking a pension and retiring.
So the chair of the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities is Ms. Emma Cook. She began her
Who was the AMA cheese company?
the European one. So she was the European one, and she took over on November 2020. It would be interesting, isn't it, if June Rain goes there?
Yeah.
You're right. That's how they get rewarded, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bigger promotions.
Yeah, and probably turn up once a month and they get paid a lot for doing it. I mean, the EMA, in terms of a comparison with the MHRA, when we got the common technical document and supposedly they were reviewing everything, the EMA was a lot more detailed than we were. Don't forget, though, we actually came out of the EU on January 21.
Oh, by the way, sorry, very quickly. Guess who the previous ICMRA chair was from 2016 to 2019? Dr. Ian Hudson, Chief Executive of the UK Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory. So the June Rain's predecessor ended up head of this. So it isn't that far off to speculate that June Rain might end up. What the hell? So this is what I mean. You get promoted upwards for your
incompetence
and bad behaviour.
Yeah. But they know they're being rewarded for doing a good job because they've been asked to do something and they've done it. That's the thing that most normal people can't understand, because it's crimes against humanity.
But who's paid? No one. Name me one person, one
Nobody's
politician,
paid.
One celebrity, one doctor, one scientist, one news media journalist. No one has paid for what they've done to us.
You've got Robert Kennedy, who's written a book on Fauci, totally referenced, completely pulling into pieces, showing him about gain of function, the whole lot.
Yeah.
And nothing's happened.
What do you think of that? But then the Trump administration on day 2 was pushing $500 billion for mRNA vaccines.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Well, you know what I think of mRNA vaccines. I mean, for a kick-off, they shouldn't be called vaccines.
I know. But I'm talking about, what do you think about the Trump administration rolling it at day 2? Aren't they meant to be Team Freedom, make America healthy again?
It's a bit strange, isn't it? Because he brought in the vaccines when he was around the last time. So there's only one person you could blame, perhaps, if you want to start saying that you were the one that instigated this.
I've heard that. I read somewhere that he actually signed a contract with Moderna back in January 2020, before even the pandemic took off.
Well,
Am I right?
A lot of them did, because Moderna wasn't actually producing anything. And a lot of people propped them up to keep going to this point in 2020 when they could start working on the mRNA vaccines that we needed. But Moderna, obviously, it means modified RNA, the name. It's been around for quite a few years and has produced nothing. The thing that always bothered me was the amount of mRNA in Moderna compared with Pfizer.
Yeah.
So you've got 100 micrograms in Moderna compared with 30 in the Pfizer. But the more disappointing thing is that Pfizer has 10 micrograms for children. Moderna has 25, which is near the adult dose.
So I say that again?
20. So Moderna has 100 compared with 30 micrograms in Pfizer. But the child's dose of Pfizer is 10 micrograms, but it's 25 in Moderna for children, which is very similar to the 30 in Pfizer. Okay? And there were studies within the common technical document that stated that it was 100 micrograms was too high, too many side effects. Now, the thing that's happened that I haven't told you is the Pfizer-Moderna document analysis. They got the Pfizer stuff. They got the Moderna stuff.
Yeah.
They went back for the Pfizer stuff, and they got the Pfizer on 12 to 15-year-olds as well. So there's millions of pages sat sitting there. And in December, there was a webinar with all the people that were doing the research and what have you. And they were told that it was going to stop.
What was going to stop?
The research. They weren't going to analyse any more stuff. It was being taken off them.
Why?
Don't know. Can't find that out. So they've done about 104 reports, mainly on Pfizer, because that's what they got first. And there's 2 or 3 in there that are to do with Moderna, and Moderna was just about to be started. Naomi Wolf had to put in new systems to actually be able to analyse the Pfizer stuff, So they were hoping that could cope with the 4.8 million pages they've got of Moderna. But in December, it was pulled. So they just published a second volume of the reports. There's about 50 in the first one and 38 in the second book. And then it stopped. Because I worked with them, I put together a brief resume of each report. And I had an index so that you could look up, you could find very quickly out of 100 odd reports which ones were to do with pregnancy, for example, or to do with inflammation or whatever it is that you were interested in. So I put that together to make it easy for people. So, yeah, but it stopped. And nobody seems to know that. So why would it be stopped? But it's funny that all around the world, Moderna are being paid by governments to open vaccine production centres. So we've spent a lot of money on getting them to set up here.
Why are we giving them money? I don't understand that. Why are governments giving money to Moderna? So honestly, I don't get that. Why?
It doesn't make sense.
Why are governments like Australia and Britain, whatever, giving money to Moderna to open up factories? Surely, I don't understand that. Why would that be the case?
I mean, it's bringing employment in, perhaps. But they're pushing. Britain is pushing this cell and gene technology. So near to where I live is Glaxo. So Glaxo, Nebworth House sold them a whole load of land in the 90s. And it was supposed
Nebworth House.
Yeah. And it was supposed to be their site that was going to produce the AIDS solution and all the rest of it. We all laughed that they got all these big chimneys and we wanted to make sure the AIDS virus wasn't coming out the top of the chimneys. You know, there was all concern in the area. And that didn't happen. They weren't very successful. There's a lot of people locally who seem to have taken redundancy or early retirement and what have you. And then all these little cell and gene technology units, so small companies, these 10 or 12 scientists that are in a unit developing one thing for one particular area, they're all now setting up in the grounds of Glaxo. And we're the third biggest cell and gene therapy sector in the world.
Has even one cell and gene therapy treatment been proven to work?
No.
No, seriously.
No, it hasn't, because they've now got things that have been out for a few years that are now shown by the FDA to actually create secondary cancers. I know you're frowning at me. It's just very difficult to understand why. The other thing they've done instead...
I'm frowning because I'm struggling to understand this. I'm struggling to understand because I'm aware that the government is pushing cell and gene technology. My head is like, surely you need something that has got a proven track record. You can see that there's going to be benefit in this and it's going to work.
It links into mRNA and it's all fine now. You know, we've made it so that it's working.
I mean, are people just so stupid? Is it literally just money, hubris? Like, because human beings have got a habit of jumping on top of something, thinking it's the next big thing. Whether it's the South Pacific scandal, you remember the South Sea scandal in the 1800s? They're investing in God knows what, and then it all went tits up, and there's a massive financial crash. I mean, is it just humans love to get behind something that they think is going to be the next big ticket? And they're going to pile in all this money hoping they're going to win?
This isn't Pharma getting it behind it. It's the government getting it behind it. They're not waiting for Pharma to produce, because if we're going to sell these things at enormous amounts, then they're going to make a lot of money from it anyway. Why do they need to be set up by the government?
Exactly, why? I don't.
Because we're actually wanting to be this centre for this type of technology. We want people to come in, and the MHRA keep going on about how they want to be the clinical research hub. You know, they want everything to be handled in this 90 to 100 days, and everything's going to be handled within.
So that's what I mean.
UK.
If we give them the benefit of the doubt, is it literally comes down to these people are so deluded that they think they're at the cutting edge of science, that they're going to make Britain the top country in the world of this technology and bring wealth and prosperity and cure illness and disease, and everyone's going to be a winner, and the government can then bask in the glory of this thing that they pushed. I mean, is it literally that?
I think so. I mean, at the end of the day, in Stevenage, we had a Marks and Spencer's. They took the Marks and Spencer's down to develop, and all around the square of that, they built flats, quite nice flats, and there is some commercial stuff there as well. And the middle of it was the car park, Marks and Spencer's old car park. Now, all the industry, there's Astrium and MBDA and all the science stuff and space stuff and what have you, in one road of industrial area within Stevenage. But right in the middle of Stevenage, with these flats all around it, we've got this building called Autolus, which is cell and gene therapy. They built it right in the centre. And the council thought it was fine because they got something like 60 million for it being built. And it's a green building because they built it up in units up in Newcastle and brought it down. So that makes it so that the carbon footprint in Stevenage is fine, which you can't work out. And across the road from this is a swimming pool, Stevenage swimming pool. And so I wrote into the council about the planning permission and tried to get some information and what have you. Got absolutely nowhere. They've no idea what they're actually putting there. And I asked about the lipid nanoparticles because Headley told me they'd be bringing them down from Stafford, back of a lorry, at minus whatever it should be, if that's true. And it would be going into Stevenage, the back of this building. And it was all right because they got caged areas for the liquid nitrogen that were under lock and key. And I thought, yes, and you've got car parking under the Autolus building. What happens if an electric car goes up?
Okay, so I've got Autolus website, leveraging an experienced team in cell therapy, manufacturing, logistics, chimeric antigen receptor T-cell therapy. What the hell is that all about?
Well, the chimeric is the one that has actually caused the secondary cancers.
But it says that for many years the cornerstone of cancer treatment has been surgery, chemo, and radiation therapy. Recent years have seen the emergence of cancer immunotherapy.
Yeah, they're trying to make things spot on, aren't they? They're trying to make things go straight to those cells because they think they can do that.
So we're using chimeric antigen receptors to reprogram our T cells product candidates. These receptors combine the tumor recognition domain of an antibody with the activation of co-stimulatory domains from the T-cell receptor to rearm a patient's T-cells to recognize and kill their cancer cells.
So you're reprogramming your T-cells to get rid of your cancer.
But that doesn't work, does it?
I wouldn't have thought so, no.
I mean, I think it's do you not think
it's mucking about with nature.
Isn't it hubris to think that our bodies are deficient and defective and don't know what to do, and actually, we can do a better job at it? Yeah. What do you think?
I think that it's criminal what they're trying to do. I think...
Is this just the 21st century version of snake oil?
I would put it this way. Just because they can do it or think they can do it doesn't mean they should.
But like I said, is this the 20th snake oil? Giving desperate people desperate solutions.
Yeah, because they've created the turbo cancers and now they're coming up with solutions. How many companies, pharma companies, went off and bought cancer companies so that they were ready to go once, the turbo cancers are taken off? It's very, very frightening because most people will not know about this.
Man, it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
You ever heard of investor Syncona?
No.
So basically, apparently this company was set up by Dr. Martin Poole, spun out from UCL, 30 million Series A investment from founder investor Syncona. I wonder who's behind Syncona. Yeah. It just gets interesting, isn't it?
You keep going. The rabbit hole gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and more people get involved in it. And in a way, you've got to stop because it's too much to take in. But from what the overview is that these things are going to kill people, and they're going to be sold as the saving grace for people with cancer, because we know the mRNA technology and the things around that do not work. If you're giving something a genetic product that is going to reproduce in your body or have an effect on your T cells or whatever it might be, it's going to have other consequences.
Yeah. All right, listen, have we covered everything?
There's always something else, isn't there?
What else have we not talked about?
I mean, I can't really say too much about the monitor, but I can come back and talk to you about that.
The monitor?
The yellow card vaccine monitor.
Why?
Because I haven't had my judgment yet.
Okay. Well, so you've put in a request. What have you put the request in for?
I put in a request for so they did the yellow card vaccine monitor different from yellow card in terms of they recruited people who had or were about to be vaccinated, and they were going to follow them up at regular intervals to get the information about how they were feeling.
Okay.
Yeah. So rather than you have something go wrong with you, you send in a yellow card. This had a gang of 36,000 people.
So instead of being passive, they were actively wanting to monitor.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing.
Depends if you do it properly. And there were 2,500 pregnant women within that 36,000. So I heard June Rain in November 22 talk about boasting that she got this monitor and they'd be able to come up with some figures on pregnancy because they got a denominator. So she was very proud of the fact. And I thought, well, let's get these details. Let's get some information. Eventually, it's gone on and on and on. They were going to publish, and that's why I couldn't have the data. But we're talking about 3 years out at this point. You know, it goes on and on and on. And we're talking how many people have become pregnant and had a vaccine in that time because they're still recommending it. And so I went back and I went to a first tier tribunal. So I'm in appeal at the moment against what they ruled.
Okay. Listen, if you could revamp the MHRA, what would you do if you wanted to fix it? Is it fixable?
I don't think you can fix it on its own. I think the whole thing.
You've been made boss. You're taken over from June Rain. What are you going to do day one?
We want to sack everybody, want to try and start again. I just don't see how it can be made right.
What about take away all funding from Big Pharma and make it wholly government funded?
Well, that would be a start. But, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're not the only one. Australia's got the TGA, and that's about 96% funded by Pharma. So it's an international problem. And if you just take one out and make one more satisfactory, you've still got the rest of the world that's acting in the way that the MHRA used to behave. So we need to go back to first principles. There was in 2004-05, there was a health select committee that basically pointed out then, which is 20 years ago, how wrong it was for us to have the big percentages of funding coming from pharmaceuticals. They suggested things that should be changed, and it's never been changed. There's no point in them having the meeting because obviously it didn't bring anything about. So this has been going on a long, long time.
Okay, right.
You'd have to change all the people because you'd have to change all the mindsets within the people. Because if you listen to the board meeting, and I don't ever wish that on anybody, it's not the most scintillating 2 hours I ever spend. They're patting themselves on the back all the time. They think they're doing a very good job.
Yeah.
And you can't get rid of that mindset. It's,
It's the groupthink. It's dangerous. I understand that, by the way. The systems can become psychopathic. The individuals create the culture, and the culture in itself, the organization, can become psychopathic.
Yeah.
I mean, doctors, I recently was shown lots of messages on a private doctor Facebook group, and they're all the same. They're all lambasting this doctor for questioning the COVID vaccine, wondering whether he's a real doctor or not, saying why is he in this group, he should be kicked out. We believe in freedom of speech, but not when it comes to criticising vaccines, la-di-da-di-da. It can't be a real doctor. Look at his picture, it's a blurry photo. I mean, stupid, ridiculous. Ad hominem attacks. Oh my God, how can he question vaccines? This guy must have lost the plot. He's an idiot and dangerous. Get rid of him. These are doctors.
Yeah.
Doctors, consultants.
Yeah. And
they've lost the plot. They can't reason. They're actually insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's this religion, isn't it?
It's a religion.
And the vaccines are a religion.
I know.
And if you go along with that religion, you can't hear anything that anybody's telling you about the reality of it all.
So all these people in the MHRA are in their own religion, blinded by money and power and this belief that they are actually good people doing a good job, and look how amazing they are when they're so corrupt. Yeah. It's
national treasure. June Rain was told she was a national treasure.
Oh my God.
But that was the MHRA telling her that.
Wow. So it gets to a point where you're right, where you think, you know what, this is just so toxic, so damaged, has to be broken down. Just get rid of it all. I mean, it's rotten to the core, isn't it?
Yeah. And nobody has whistleblown, have they? Nobody within the organisation has said exactly what it's really like. They're very unhappy people because we have I suppose she's the equivalent of HR, she's the people director. And she will tell you that quite a large percentage are very unhappy. And they're being asked to do too much work. And that's because they've had vacancies. So, it's not a happy place.
Well, I'm not sad about that. Right, listen, final question of the day. You're on your deathbed. Could be next week.
Thank you very much.
Could be next year. Could be 10 years from now. Before you pass away and meet your maker, you're surrounded by your loved ones, your children, your grandchildren. What words of wisdom and advice would you give them?
I'd I'd get them to start thinking about the truth. The truth is very important to me. My dad was called Honest John. I mean, at the end of the day, it's very important that we find out exactly what is going on. And we need to make sure that as many people are involved in. I mean, I've been very lucky that both my kids have come along this journey with me, because I don't know what I would have done if they hadn't. So we need to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. I suppose that's my role in my head. My role in life is to try and talk to as many people as possible. And on my deathbed, I hope that somebody can take over from it.
Great. I love it. I love the fact your dad was called Honest John.
Or was it John Smith?
Was he?
My mum was a Smith and married a Smith. I'm a purebred Smith, Ahmed.
Well, you want to hear something? You want to hear something funny? That's you and me both. So my mum was a Malik.
Right. Oh.
Totally unrelated to my dad.
Yeah.
Untypical for Pakistanis. Not first cousin or second cousin married. No relation whatsoever. But they were both Maliks.
Yeah.
So I'm a proper pure Malik.
Yeah.
Still like you.
Well, I had 2 Granny Smiths, so you would have had 2 Granny Maliks.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. I'm just reading at something. My wife, she's on this management thing, leadership program, and she said, this is my profile. She goes, my leadership characteristic.
Okay.
I really like it. Honesty and humility. Persons with very high scores on the honesty-humility scale avoid manipulating others for personal gain, feel little temptation to break rules, are uninterested in lavish wealth and luxuries, and feel no special entitlement to elevated social status. So that's my wife.
Well, there you are. You can see why you married her now.
Yeah. The only bad thing about her is that she feels little temptation to break the rules. I don't break rules. I'm like Eddie O'Bang, one of my previous guests, who said, the rules just don't apply to me. And I love that, because if there's a stupid fracking rule, guess what? It doesn't apply to me.
Well, you've got to query it, haven't you?
Right?
You've got to question it if it doesn't make sense.
So that's just the one thing about my wife. She's a bit of a rule follower, but she's slightly bending them now.
I was a rule follower. I was goody at school. I mean,
Yeah.
I did everything I was supposed to do, and it all made sense to me and what have you. I had most of my life. I mean, when I went to the protest in August 2020, I've never been to a protest before in my life. So it's it woke me up.
Oh, well done, you. Well, listen, well done for exposing what's going on in the MHRA. Other than the MHRA, is there any other focus of attack that you have, or are you just wanting to just root out the evil that's in that place? Or the incompetence, or the whatever you want to call it?
Just through the Pfizer, the Moderna document analysis and the exposure of the mRNA. I mean, that produced some terrible facts that people should know. So that's another thing to keep promoting, really.
Moral of the story, don't take any more mRNA shots, no matter what. And if you're dying from cancer, for God's sake, you know what? We all have to die. Guess what? We're all immortal, by the way.
There are things you can try.
Yeah, there are things you can try. Exactly. There are things you can try. But ultimately, we are immortal. Death is just one step. It's not the end of everything, right? Don't live in fear.
No.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
And so don't take any more mRNA shots. Just don't do that.
I mean, there are ways to go, aren't they? And mRNA is not the way.
No. Stick it to the man and say, you can stick your mRNA where the sun don't shine. And secondly, when it comes to things like MHRA and other government bodies, realize that these government bodies are run and organized by very failed, human beings, flawed human beings, who, no matter what they say, aren't necessarily doing things in your own best interest. So use some critical thinking and discernment, and you know what? Go by your gut instinct and trust what's best for yourself. Don't go by what other people are telling you. Is that not reasonable?
Yeah, that's reasonable. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not a fair old world, is it? I mean, some people are not exposed to this information that we know, and they need to be shown what's happening. And we need to expose as much as we can for as long as we can.
All right. Listen, thank you so much for coming. I know it's been a long drive. I really appreciate it.
It's longer than it should have been.
Cheryl, seriously, thank you so much, okay? God bless you.
Thank you.